read a book and ask yourself, does the protagonist need to be human? I should clarify, Victor needed to be human. There are enough ace and autistic-coded robots in media, and I'm sure there's symbolism to Victor being a real boy, and there are plot things too, him bleeding and whatnot. But you know what? The fact that he's human and going to grow old and die and leave behind his robots makes me sad. So I'm going to say it's not necessary and Victor shouldn't have been human. Let's talk about The Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. In The Lives of Puppets follows Victor, a human man who lives in a forest with his father, Giovanni, and robot friends Nurse Ratched and Rambo. The story starts with Victor and Giovanni's origin. Giovanni was wandering through the forest when he came across a little house and decided to turn it into a home and more tree houses. Then after a few years, he got lonely until some humans came across his house as they were fleeing. They couldn't stay, but before they left, the woman entrusted Giovanni with her baby, who Giovanni named Victor. And over time, Victor learned and grew and eventually learned to speak when he was about 6. The book never explicitly states he's autistic like it does that he's ace, but it's not subtle with its clues. Anyway, Victor learns and grows, and the story officially starts when he's 21, when he's going scavenging with 2 robots he saved from the junkyard, Rambo, the vacuum, and can you guess what kind of vacuum he is? And Nurse Ratched, an old nursing robot who can also drill, and right away, the characters are so fun. TJ Klune has a knack for writing really big characters. Rambo is anxious and oblivious and totally gave me Chauncey from House in the Cerulean Sea vibes. But to be fair, at least half of that is because both books are narrated by Daniel Henning, and he uses the same voice for both. But I love both of them, and I also love Nurse Ratched. She has sociopathic tendencies and has a lot of black humor that's really fun and plays against Rambo's anxiety beautifully. Hey! I interrupt this video to tell you about my book, Phantoms of the Inferno, a high fantasy story with elemental magic systems, evil kings, espionage, and mass extinction events galore. If that sounds interesting, you should read Phantoms of the Inferno on Scribblehub and Wattpad. I put up a new chapter every Sunday and have the links down in the description. Now back to the video. Anyway, the 3 of them are in the junkyard again getting a circuit breaker, which Victor manages to get, but they end up toppling a huge pile of junk along the way, and then have to rush home before the cleaning robots working in the junkyard can get them. And from there, they head home where Giovanni's gotten their old record player working. The 4 of them enjoy music for a while until Victor heads to bed, where he checks on a project he's been working on, an electronic heart similar to the one Giovanni made for himself to be a contingency in case Giovanni's ever needs a new heart. But Victor's heart doesn't end up going to his father, because a few days later, he, Nurse Ratched, and Rambo head back to the junkyard where they discover a bunch of discarded androids, and Nurse Ratched says one of them still has power. So they dig through all the other old androids until they find one who's not quite powered down. He manages to grab Victor and threaten him, then his battery dies, so they decide to take him home and name him based on his serial number, Hap.
What's your name?
Then they get to work fixing him, giving him new limbs since he lost some, replacing the parts of him that were too damaged with wood, and giving him a new heart as a power source. And they do all this in secret away from Giovanni, which makes sense in the book. Victor and Giovanni have a really fun and totally tropey father-son relationship. They love each other and just drive each other a little bit insane, but not telling Giovanni about Hap turns out to be a mistake, because as soon as Hap wakes up, he freaks out, then Giovanni comes and freaks out, and then there's this whole big chase through the forest that finally ends with Hap stopping Rambo from running over a butterfly. After that, things calm down. Giovanni is able to talk to Hap, and they welcome him into their family. And it's not an easy transition. There are already a lot of big personalities, and Hap is blunt and rude and angry, and totally adds to the chaos. But it's so fun. Over the next few weeks, Victor and the others help explain to Hap how humans and the forest and movies and music and the world works. And I will say, this was really interesting because Victor is pretty stringent when it comes to modern social norms, like don't pee or bathe in front of each other, don't watch each other sleep, stuff like that. And in some ways that makes sense. Autistic people mind you, I'm generalizing here, tend to have a strong sense of justice. If you explain why a rule exists to them, they'll follow and enforce it. So if the human movies said those were the rules, it makes sense why Victor follows them. But he's the only one who follows them because he's the only human, and it's just so interesting watching him be the only person following such strict rules.
Rules are rules, guys. Rules are rules.
Anyway, everyone slowly starts to acclimate to Hap until Victor bleeds in the scrapyard, and that clues the authority into the fact that there is a human there, and they sent androids in to investigate. And luckily Giovanni was prepared with a lead mind bunker, which we are told is where Victor was made. But there's so much happening we can't dwell on that, because while Victor and the others are in the bunker, some androids come on a blimp called the Terrible Dogfish and take Giovanni, and then the androids burn down their house just to add insult to injury, and it all made me so sad. These are the chapters where we get some great world building and where Victor and his friends set out to get Giovanni back. The four of them scavenge what they can from their burned remains of their home, then set out to the City of Electric Dreams. And I will say, they added the detail that the forest they're in is in Oregon and the City of Electric Dreams is Las Vegas, because to Victor, who's traveling on foot and never left the forest, that's basically a world away. To me, that's a road trip. That's taking full advantage of a long weekend. Anyway, they set off, starting out walking until they come across a highway. They know right away this is a sort of electrically charged highway that would kill Victor and the robots if they set foot on it, so they walk alongside it for a while until they come across the coachman and his moving house of human curios and curiosities.
It's a secret wax museum.
Then, after a little bit of back and forth with the coachman, they get kidnapped and added to the museum. And I should mention now that Victor's in disguise, so while all this is very interesting to him, the coachman, who adores all things human, doesn't realize Victor is a human. And it's actually sort of funny, because everyone keeps commenting on how hideous Victor is. Again, Victor is the only one following social norms. Anyway, as stressful as it is to be kidnapped and put on display, the group does manage to accomplish a lot. They manage to learn a lot about humans from the coachman. Originally, Giovanni told Victor that humans built robots and then blew each other up, and while Victor wasn't the last human because he did at least have parents, there weren't many left. But as it turns out, that was a lie, and it was actually a robot uprising that killed off all humans, and now Victor is the last one left because Giovanni made him. And I will say, this was a good twist. I figured pretty early on that was the case, because sentient robots and humans' annihilation go hand in hand, but that didn't make the confirmation any less fun. Another thing they accomplish is just getting anywhere. The coachman is actually headed back to the City of Electric Dreams, and he makes it so their journey only lasts a few days, and luckily, before they get to the city, they manage to make friends with the coachman. Initially, things turn dicey when one of the robots who comes to see the museum recognizes Hap as a harp, which are like the police of this world. Then more harps come and threaten to cause trouble, but the coachman manages to send them away without them discovering Victor or any of the other human memorabilia. But once they're gone, the coachman is angry, and that makes him slip up enough for Nurse Ratched and Hap to get a hold of him and threaten him. And in the chaos of it all, Victor tells the coachman he's human. And because he loves humans, he lets them go and keeps giving them a lift. And then we get some long talks between the coachman and Victor about humanity. Then between Hap and Victor about stuff. I couldn't pay attention because their love story starts blooming, and it was so fun.
My robot friend.
Rambo was a really well-written character. It's not easy to write a character you just want to throttle, but TJ Klune does that, and I did want to just shake Rambo once they were in the city. But I'm getting ahead of myself because these are the chapters where they get into the city, and then I wanted to kill Rambo.
Getting on very thin ice.
So the four of them getting into the city was actually really fun in its absurdity. First, the coachman has to call in a favor from a robot Bernard who works in a warehouse where they have containers our group can sneak into the city in. But they can't spare four, so they end up having to double up. And somehow Nurse Ratched manages not to kill Rambo when they're in a crate together, and Vic doesn't burst into flames, having to basically be the little spoon with Hap for several hours. And they get into the city, and then I started to want to kill Rambo, because he's so fun to read, but he has no street smarts. He keeps wandering up to strange robots and either almost giving away who they are and what they're doing, or failing for whatever schemes the robot has. And again, it's a wonder Nurse Ratched doesn't kill Rambo and Rambo doesn't get any of them killed. But somehow, in spite of Rambo, they get through the city to heaven. And heaven was described as a pyramid, which probably means it's a Luxor hotel and casino, but my mind immediately jumped to Brass Pro Shop, and that's funnier, so that's what I stuck with.
Check out the Bass Pro Shops.
Anyway, heaven turns out to be a robot brothel, and I have to say it, this is the second time I've read this book, and I forgot a lot of the brothel parts, and made the mistake of listening to the audiobook at work. Have I mentioned this is not a children's book? Like, House in the Cerulean Sea, I would feel comfortable reading with a kid. Not this book.
Especially not good for kids at all.
They get through the brothel and get a meeting with the Blue Fairy. The Pinocchio references are not subtle, and as it turns out, the Blue Fairy is a jerk with a lot of lore to drop. First, and this may not be in chronological order, first and most important to me is the lore that the Blue Fairy gave Geo the ingredients to make Victor, and this part actually bugged me, because the Blue Fairy said egg and ovum. Those are the same thing, and they are only half the ingredients you need to make a baby. You can't just hand someone an egg and end up with a baby. What about the sperm? Or was the robot confused and it was actually an embryo they gave Geo? This is a plot hole that really messed with me. Does TJ Klune not know the difference between an ovum and an embryo? Do I need to turn this into a biology lesson? Alright, hang on. Alright, for the... That's basically it. Making a baby requires sperm and eggs for ingredients and a healthy uterus. There is no way around those things. You need them to make a baby. So be careful and do not accidentally make people. The next lore the Blue Fairy drops is that Hap was built by Geo to be one of the human extermination robots, and part of how they tell this is by strapping Hap into a machine that displays all his memories from the time he was first activated to the extermination to Geo being overcome with guilt over what he'd done and leaving the city, Hap refusing to tell the authority where Geo went and getting decommissioned and escaping under the bodies of the other androids and ending up at the scrapyard where Vic, Rambo, and Nurse Ratched found him. And after Hap relived all that and had all his memories back, he played into one of my least favorite tropes, which is the love interest is temporarily out of their mind and physically hurts the protagonist. Look, it's an easy way to create drama, and I am not free of sin, but I just hate the trope. Don't be with people who hit you, even once. I am trying not to rant because I could go on about this trope, and maybe someday I'll make a video on it, but summary.
We're just getting started.
Vic kisses Hap to bring him back. It's a bad first kiss because Vic is being strangled, but it works. They do the trope of Hap feeling awful for hurting Vic and Vic comforting him, telling him it's okay. It's not that big a deal that he was physically assaulted. Then they go and spend the night in heaven. And Vic and Hap actually do have a really sweet talk where they talk about their feelings and everything that's happened. And there's this meme, if I can find it, I'll put it up. If I can't, it's a person reading fan fiction, and in one panel, it's them stone-faced reading smut, and in the next they're a blushing mess reading fluff, and that was me. I did not appreciate the brothel parts of heaven, but the fluffy talk proclaiming their love for each other had me doing a happy dance at my workstation.
Relax, do the happy dance.
But the book can't stay all fluff. The next day, they infiltrate the Benevolent Tower where Geo has been recommissioned without his memories and put back to work. And the Blue Fairy actually made it so Hap had the right clearance and could just walk them in. And they get pretty far, again, in spite of Rambo, before they come across a harp, which is what Hap originally was, and Hap and the harp get into a fight, and Hap ends up killing the harp. So many H names. Then they hurry up to Geo's lab. They try to convince Geo to come with them and help jog his memories, but Geo doesn't have a heart, so it doesn't work. So instead, they use a virus the Blue Fairy gave them that would wipe out the hive mind neural network the Authority uses to control all the robots. And originally, Nurse Ratched volunteered to be the one to inflict the virus, which would wipe her memories, but the Blue Fairy made a backup of those. But in all the chaos of Geo not remembering them and more robots coming to try and get them, Nurse Ratched is knocked out of commission, so Hap is the one who sacrifices himself to inflict the virus, and it works. All the robots are left as confused messes without memories, but who are under their own control. Then our team steals the terrible dogfish and leaves. This book ending made me feel the same way I did when I was a little kid and first watched Disney's Pocahontas. I get that it's powerful and compelling, but I like neat little bows. I want my neat little bow! Anyway, in these chapters, our group flies the terrible dogfish. Sometimes I misspell dog, God. I did that, but 1,000 times worse, writing dogfish as one word. Anyway, in these chapters, our group flies the terrible dogfish back to their old house, but it's a burned wreck. They poke around in the ashes and a little bit and manage to find Rambo's favorite film, Top Hat, still in one piece, but that's about it. So they keep flying the terrible dogfish until they find a new home where they park the dogfish and live in there. And over the next few months, Vic makes hearts for Geo and Hap. First he makes one for Geo, and the heart more or less works. It's sort of like reverse dementia, at least that's my best comparison. Geo comes back, slowly but surely regaining his memories, but he still has bad moments and days where he doesn't remember anything. Then Vic makes a heart for Hap, and he doesn't recover exactly like Geo. Again, very strong reverse dementia vibes, but he does slowly get his memories back, and it's so bittersweet and lovely, and it ends with Vic and Hap kissing, and it was really good. On to writing before I get choked up. I know I say it a lot, but this is a good example on how to write strong characters. They each have strong personalities that are apparent right away and are so fun. But that's not what I'm focusing on in this video. No, I'm focusing on the cake in the room. The cake which I'd rather eat than have sex. Honestly, the joke I frequently make is I'd rather have a root canal. I had one a while back and I almost fell asleep in the chair. And being an asexual, reading asexual characters puts me in a weird position because I'll read or watch or experience these characters and I don't usually clock that they're ace until I see other people saying, oh, this thing is them basically confirming that they're ace. And I'm just like, is that not how it is for everyone? Was Vic's reaction to the brothel not normal?
So weird.
It is something I need to work on if I ever want to become a sellout, shelling out cheap, poorly written romance novels that make me a ton of money. But as of right now, I don't write smut because it is completely out of my wheelhouse. But if you're interested in writing an ace character, Vic feels like good representation. I will say the book brings up sex and genitals so much, not just in the brothel, and I get why. It can be challenging being an ace person and living in a hypersexualized world, seeing ads or TV shows or books and just being uncomfortable because I know what they're trying to do and I want nothing to do with it. So TJ Klune made and talked about sex and genitals and Vic's discomfort with those topics hyper apparent to play up what it's like just being ace in our society. It's great representation, but boy did it make me uncomfortable reading this, again, at work. And that's all I really got. I'm sure there's more I could talk about, but I kept getting distracted by either the genitals or the cute love story and did not have my writer's brain on when reading this book very much. But maybe you'll be able to get more out of it, so go out and read In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. She came and laid on my lap during my rant. Are you purring because you were spayed and there were no accidental kittens? Yes.